Here we go. Okay, welcome to Silicon Valley Impact. This is Roger Royce on Tel Radio, and today we are talking to Kym McNicholas, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and entrepreneur, one of the real pioneers in digital video content, a big name here in Silicon Valley, but that's not what she's doing today. What she's doing today and why she's on the show today is because of healthcare innovation and some of the things she's doing in promoting a technology and a solution for a disease that you might not have even known has existed. And that's hopefully what we can talk about. So first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here, Kym.
Hi, Roger. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, so before we jump into what you're doing now, because I think our viewers and our listeners are going to be really interested to hear what you're up to. Your story is fascinating. Your origin story, your pictures on a billboard. You've been a journalist. You've been a radio broadcaster yourself. You've done startup competitions. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and your path, how you got to where you are today?
It's so interesting because I think it was both Apple's Steve Jobs and also Virgin's Sir Richard Branson that have always said it's all about connecting the dots in your career. And you can't connect those dots until you look backwards. Sometimes you don't always see where you're going, but just keep following and creating new dots along the path. And then look back and go, wow, oh my gosh, this is how I got to where I am today, because all the dots do in fact connect. I started out my career actually wanting to get my doctorate in sports medicine and be one of the trainers for the San Francisco 49ers. And because I have a passion for sports, and I've always had a passion for helping others to improve their game, get back into play. And that ended up leading me to finding a voice in broadcasting, because I had the opportunity when I was in college to be the color commentator for the inaugural Shriners Bowl, the state championship game for junior college football. And I was like, wow, this is really fun. I love the microphone. And the first job I ended up in broadcasting, if you understand broadcasting, it's not always necessarily what you want to do. And I ended up in general news. And ultimately that led me into doing business news, because it was right about that time where online journalism was emerging back in 1998, 99. And I became one of the first video journalists online, reporting the ups and downs of the stock market, the boom and bust and reemergence of Silicon Valley and the tech market, the tech boom and bust. And following, forward, I ultimately did become the first female sports director and sports anchor here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Went back into business news, ended up at Forbes magazine, where I spent my 10-year, and then ultimately was asked to run a startup competition with Sir Richard Branson as our anchor judge. And from there, really learning that the next big wave of innovation was in healthcare, I decided to launch a radio show called Kym McNicholas On Innovation, and a big focus was on health tech. And that's where I discovered that one of the biggest breakthroughs in cardiovascular medicine was getting ready to go into an FDA study. And I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to become the first journalist to actually be able to capture on video an entire FDA study in the vascular world from start to finish. And the company agreed to have me there every step of the way. So I not only covered the first leg of the journey, pun intended, which is in legs, to see how this technology would unblock arteries in the legs. Ultimately, from there, when it's a proven technology, it can then move on to seeing how it does in unblocking arteries in the heart. Legs are safer, right? The test market. But it was really from there that I ended up traveling to nearly a dozen countries, more than 30 states, watching thousands of hours of procedures in which doctors unblocked arteries in the legs as well as the heart, that I realized that something very disconcerting, that different doctors, different tools, different techniques actually dictated outcomes. And I wanted to bring that to the public. And so I started working on this this documentary. And from there, it really hit home when I was able to use that information to save one of my family members. And that's where I ended up. I don't know how much you want me to go into on that yet, but that ultimately ended up with me starting an organization called The Way to My Heart, which is a nonprofit 501c3 that is focused on saving life and limb and providing high-touch advocacy with all of what I learned over the years with a disease called peripheral artery disease. And peripheral artery disease is plaque buildup in the leg arteries, mainly the leg arteries, but in the peripherals, it could be the arms, it could be the brain. But 3 in 5 people who suffer a heart attack, 3 in 5 people who suffer a heart attack have plaque buildup in their leg arteries. So if only a doctor in every annual appointment would take 2 seconds, 2 fingers to feel the leg pulses in someone's legs, we might be able to save more lives and limbs. And so that's really where I'm at in helping to spread awareness, helping to provide advocacy to help these patients get early diagnosis and early treatment, and not just early treatment, but the right treatment.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, what that is, and if that's something that can be preventable, and what your organization is doing to raise awareness. I had never heard of this disease until you mentioned it, but that's really stunning. 3 in 5. Holy
Right.
cow.
And it's actually 1 in 5 people over the age of 60 actually have it. 1 in
Oh.
3 diabetics over the age of 50, and more than 50% of the United States is either pre-diabetic or diabetic. So you can imagine how prevalent this disease is, but most don't know it, if at all, until it's too late or it's reached advanced stages because so many doctors don't test for it.
Yeah. Okay, well, hold that thought. We're going to take a short break here. Roger Royce on Tel Radio. We're talking to Kym McNicholas, the founder of The Way to My Heart and also an Emmy Award-winning journalist. And we'll be right back after this break. Okay, welcome back. Roger Royce, Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio. We're talking here today with Kym McNicholas. She's the founder of The Way to My Heart. And we were just chatting before the break about peripheral artery disease, something I didn't even know existed until Kym told me about it. So Kym, tell me again, what is this disease and how do you know if you have it and how bad is it?
Peripheral artery disease is plaque buildup in the peripheral arteries, mainly the legs. We have had patients who've had it in the arms and sometimes in the small vessels and in the brain as well, but it's mainly the legs. And it has led to nearly 200,000 amputations annually, more than 50% of them being preventable thanks to new tools and techniques. The issue that we have is very few doctors are really diagnosing it on a consistent basis. Most brush off the signs and symptoms of neuropathy, of numbness, tingling, leg pain, leg cramps, as peripheral neuropathy, diabetic neuropathy, sciatica. We did a poll, and more than 70% of people who have peripheral artery disease were told by their doctor that it was something else first. So it was brushed off. Some are told it's old age. Some are told it's arthritis. The most common is diabetic neuropathy. It's very prevalent in diabetics. We've had patients told that it's a magnesium deficiency or potassium deficiency without even having blood work to prove it. Yeah. And so, as I said, it's literally 2 seconds, 2 fingers to feel your leg pulses, and that could save life and limb.
That's all it takes to find this.
Exactly.
Very simple. Now, is this a genetic disease or is it more lifestyle or both?
It's both. It can be hereditary. It can also be lifestyle. Smoking is one of the biggest causes for many people. For people who don't smoke, heredity is a big factor as well.
They've got these new technologies now doing like full body scans and scanning and calcium scans. Is that something that could detect this? And if so, does it regularly?
I think a full body calcium scan probably could do a really good job. It's as simple as taking a blood pressure cuff, though, placing it on the legs, placing it on the arms. We're talking antiquated technology, right? It's as easy as that, whether it's your 2 fingers in the beginning, taking the blood pressure cuffs and measuring the differential between your legs and your arms in the terms of the blood pressure, and then a basic ultrasound. That is only what you need in order to determine whether or not that you have this. Some people who get the blood pressure cuffs, though, can get a false normal if they do have a lot of rock hard calcium, it's in advanced stages, or if they have diabetes.
So how bad is it if somebody, you mentioned 1 in 6 people over 60 have this in America. How bad is it? How dangerous is it?
Well, it leads to nearly 200,000 amputations every single year. 1.5 million people every year have strokes and heart attacks. And I think since 3 in 5 people who suffer a heart attack have this, if a doctor would literally only feel the leg pulses in everyone's legs, I think we could save more lives and limbs, because if you know you have some sort of restriction of blood flow in your legs, that's what plaque in the arteries does, then it's likely that you have it in the heart. I can't tell you how many patients. We have a young woman in New York that we found out she was only 37. She had plaque buildup in her legs. And I said, hey, go get your heart checked. Turns out, lo and behold, she was on the verge of a heart attack. Now, more than 50% of people who suffer a heart attack, they show no signs or symptoms. And so literally, and they still use it as a basis for determining whether or not do you have chest pain? And that's the only way that they'll test. Or do you have high cholesterol? But more than 40% of people who suffer a heart attack have normal cholesterol in a basic lipid panel. It is not until they perform an advanced lipid panel. An advanced lipid panel, if you're in LabCorp, it's called an NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance test. Or if you have Quest, it's called a cardio IQ. And what they want to measure is the quality of your bad cholesterol or LDLs versus the quantity. You want to have large, fluffy ones, and a lot of them, but you don't want to have the small, dense LDL particles that when they become oxidized by those trans fats, we talk diet, right? Trans fats and the free radicals in the environment, that they end up infiltrating the vessel wall where it's been damaged. And plaque buildup starts with damage in your arteries. Is it an extra sugar molecule that's scratching your arteries? Is it cigarette smoke? Is it chemicals you're breathing in? Is it some other gene factor that is causing damage to your arteries, where the inflammatory response is to call in the fats and the cholesterol to bandage that up? Now, surprisingly,
Wow.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, that is. Well, I suppose being a journalist makes you really good at learning new things.
I mean, not only learning, but then, observing it in a different way and presenting it in a very different way that definitely resonates with different audiences. And I think that that's really one of the values that I bring to the table, and why we've been able to grow it, to more than 8,000 patients. But it's really interesting, especially for other entrepreneurs. I mean, I never thought my career would go in this direction. But I remember Sir Richard Branson saying something to me when I was asked to run that startup competition. I was hesitant to do so because I thought, what do I know about a startup competition? And this still stays with me today. Don't let what you don't know and have never done before get in the way of doing something great and having a huge impact. I didn't know anything about airplanes before I started Virgin America. I didn't know anything about outer space. I've never even been to space. But he said sometimes what you don't know can be your greatest asset and the greatest source of disruption in any industry. Because the problem with every industry is you get people and they only want to dip into those people within that industry that sometimes have become jaded, and they're so drinking the Kool-Aid of that industry that they can't step outside it to bring something new and innovative and disruptive to the table.
And that's what you're doing.
And
I mean,
that's
it's
what I'm
surprising that for such a dangerous condition and such a widespread prevalent condition, there's so little is known about it. I mean, I think very few doctors have even told her. No one ever told me about this. And I'm apparently in the high risk group due to my old age.
No, and what's funny is I am going to get a little personal here, is that I went on a date. I met a guy on one of the apps, and he was an orthopedic surgeon, and he started asking me what I did. And as you can see, I get on my soapbox. I'm really passionate about what I know and what I've learned in saving life and limb. And he said, oh my goodness, I get some of these patients. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I get diabetic patients all the time with diabetic feet. I had no idea that there was a treatment that could actually, where doctors could actually use technology and go all the way into the foot and unblock the arteries in the foot. When a doctor sends me a referral of a diabetic patient, well, I'm going to treat it the way I know, and I cut off their foot.
Holy cow. Well, hold that thought. We're going to talk about treatment after the break when we come back, because that is really something. This is Roger Royce. I'm here with Kym McNicholas from The Way to My Heart, a nonprofit to support or to help with people who have peripheral artery disease. We'll be right back right after this break. Okay, we're back. Roger Royce, Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio, talking with Kym McNicholas, the founder of The Way to My Heart. And she was telling us about this disease, peripheral artery disease, that people didn't really know about until recently. Her organization raises awareness, especially among doctors. Now, right before the break, I'm sorry I had to stop you, but you said something really interesting. You said there's a treatment available for this other than having to cut somebody's limbs off. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that treatment, because that's fascinating.
I think because of the new innovation that has happened, especially in the last 5 years around treating blocked arteries, particularly in the legs, that's why we're hearing more and more about it. Who wants to talk about people getting their legs cut off or toes cut off or whatever, and you just don't see or hear much about it. But there's a lot of innovation happening in this space. You have wires and balloons and what are called atherectomy devices. I think this is where the biggest waves are being made and greatest strides. Atherectomy devices are actually plaque removal devices. You have laser devices, orbital, directional, rotational, all these different types of devices that can go in there and either drill or sand down or, photochemically like ablate, the plaque that's in there. And they're getting smaller and smaller, and they can go clear into the calf, into what are called the tibial vessels in your calf or the perineal vessel in your calf, and actually clear into the loop of arteries in your foot called the pedal plantar loop. There are still some doctors in the old regime that they're still resting on what they learned in medical school and may not either have access to the new training or time for the new training or access to the newer devices. But the ones who do, I would say there are only about 10% of doctors across the United States are using these advanced tools and techniques. So just because someone has a white coat and a title doesn't mean that they have the most advanced treatment. As you know, with innovation, sometimes it's slow to roll out, especially with regulations. But the big thing that we need to work on with patients is getting them to understand all treatment options and understanding the right questions to ask their doctor in order to determine what is the best treatment for them. And most doctors will tell them, hey, my treatment's the best treatment, my treatment's the only treatment. But you as innovators who are out there, it is also your responsibility to get to the patients, not to sell them on your technology, but simply to educate them on the critical questions to ask their doctor so that they can have a productive and satisfying conversation with that doctor, as well as get a second opinion from another who may or may not have your technology, so that they can determine, make a well-informed decision as to what's right for them.
Yeah, so are you getting the word out? I mean, you can't go out on dates with every orthopedic surgeon in the country. So how else do you let people know about this?
We have grown thanks to actually COVID, where so many patients have been turned away by their hospital doctors, not prioritized. I don't want to say turned away, but they were COVID, as you know, it's a pandemic and the prioritization is towards COVID patients. So a lot of these patients in advanced stages don't know where to go. So they have found us for support. They've searched for us online in a variety of different areas to be able to get to us. We now have grown to more than 8,000 patients around the world. We've had more than 25,000 interactions with different patients over the course of our first 700 days. We've saved more than 500 limbs of patients told by their doctor that amputation was the only option. We've been able to get them to yet another doctor with advanced skills and advanced tools, great innovation that's been able to save their limb from amputation and ultimately save their life.
Wow, that's great. That's great. That's awesome. Now, your organization, you're a 501c3, so I assume you rely primarily on donations from the public and organizations. If somebody wanted to help support you and help this group, how would they get a hold of you?
Go to thewaytomyheart.org. And we do have a donation button. We are entertaining phone calls from people who want to see certain funds used in a variety of different ways. And we do try to help, distribute where a donor has the most interest. We just got a very large grant, which we're really excited about, our first very large grant for one of our programs. And so I think that it's really exciting. I mean, we have personal stories to share with every single dollar. We don't have any overhead. It goes directly to helping patients. Our Care Access program, I provide shared rides to patients getting to limb-saving procedures. I provide resources to help patients pay for their medications. I help provide medical equipment, blood pressure cuffs, exercise equipment, treadmills, because walking is the best medicine for this. We have a 24/7 leg saver hotline with wound care that is available on demand. We find that diabetic wounds in particular lead to amputation very quickly, especially if they don't have circulation that brings oxygen to those wounds for healing. So we're there with patients all of the time with our wellness team. So we have lots of different programs. And that's one of the things with our organization being small and nimble is we are very quick. And with anyone who can relate with a startup, we're quick to be nimble. We're driven by the demand of the patient, and we're able to not only listen, but execute in the moment and get things, moving forward. So the more donations that we can get, just know that every single penny is being used and going directly to save life and limb.
Yeah, I think that's really important for the audience to know. First of all, these are tax deductible donations. As a tax lawyer, I can tell you that. And secondly, you're a very lean machine in terms of organization. So you can plan on that money going directly to help patients and to support the cause. Well, Kym, I want to thank you not only for being here, but for what you're doing to support this, because you're a very accomplished person. You could be doing a lot of things in this world. You've already done a lot of things, and you've decided to devote, it looks like, all of your time these days just to helping combat this disease. So thank you on behalf of all of us, and thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. Okay, any closing words for our audience?
Just especially, if you have friends or family that are over the age of 50 and they start complaining of leg cramps or leg pain or numbness or tingling, make sure that they get their leg arteries checked. Don't settle for any less of a diagnosis or being brushed off. And also send them to thewaytomyheart.org, because you can trust and like your doctor, but that doesn't mean that they have the proven skill set using advanced tools and techniques to truly be able to exhaust all efforts to save life and limb.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And Roger Royce, Silicon Valley Impact Tele Radio, talking with Kym McNicholas, The Way to My Heart. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.